Hi everyone. In this video I'll show you how to find the data you need to use the ALEKS Progress Monitoring tool created in Excel. The first thing to do is log in to aleks.com. Fill in the information at the top of the page including class and student. And when you do this, the ALEKS dashboard will appear with all the little boxes, and the box you need is the Learning Progress box, the bottom middle box. And all the numbers you need will probably be here. The numbers you need to look at are the 70, the 68, 66, 60, the numbers to the far left of the percent sign. And those numbers represent the total content mastered. The numbers you don't need are these numbers after the plus sign. So the +4, +3, +7, +4. Those numbers represent the progress made in learning mode. So again, the numbers you need are the numbers to the far left of the percent sign. And if for some reason you need more numbers or more information, click the link at the bottom right, the progress report link. It will take you to this page and it will show you the topics learned since last assessment in this column, hours in ALEKS. This column has all the same information as what's in that learning progress box on the dashboard. If you want even more information from perhaps previous courses, click the green All Results tab, and it will show you not only this current class that we're looking at, but any previous classes as well. And to get back to the dashboard at any time, click the waffle in the top left. And it'll take you right back here, and you can look up your learning progress numbers here to plug into the progress monitoring tool. Okay, now that you know where to find the data in ALEKS, let's talk about where to put the data in the progress monitoring tool. First things first, open up the progress monitoring tool, scroll to the right, and enter the student's name. There's a student information box to the right of the chart. And when you type the student's name, it will also appear above the chart and above the graph. Next, let's enter some data. You need the scores from the dashboard in the Learning Progress box. And I'll zoom in on this. If you look to the left here, the first date in ALEKS is 11/9/14. So I need to enter it into the chart over here on a date that is on or less than 2 weeks before 11/9. So in this case, see, here's 11/10, so 10/27/14. And the data point is this 45 here. So I type in the 45. The next is 11/10, and it just so happens to correspond over here, and that's a 52. 11/24 corresponds, 12/8 corresponds, it's 56 and 60. That's rare, by the way. And then we have January 12, 2015 with a 66 score. So January 12, the 19th is passed. So let's go on January 5th, 66. And then the last score is on 126 with a 68. So 68. And you'll notice as I type in these scores, they're plotted out on the graph. Next, let's look at a couple other features of the graph. Look at the chart, the 45 here, that's our first data point. If you click in the yellow column to the right, you'll notice a drop-down box appears. And you have several options here. What you will probably use are the 30, the 45, or the 60. So let's choose 30 minutes. And all that means is that that student is getting 30 minutes of intervention a day. And when you select that, over on the graph, it automatically draws a target line, that's the blue line, and a trend line, that's the dotted red line. The target line is based on how many minutes per day a student has intervention. So look at the blue line. I'm going to choose 45 minutes per day. If they get intervention for 45 minutes per day, their rate of improvement should be higher. If they get 60 minutes per day, it should be even higher. But let's go back to 30 minutes per day. Let's talk about the trend line too. The trend line is based on the scores, the red scores. And so if I change a date in the middle or anywhere really in this column, the trend line will adjust accordingly. So let's say they get a just so this is just for demonstration purposes. Say they get an 80 on week 26 here. You'll notice the trend line changes as well. Okay. Now in this graph, whenever something appears in this intensity, this yellow column here, um, a black line will be drawn to indicate a change in intervention. So if after Christmas the teachers decide, let's give this student 45 minutes of intervention, this black line would be drawn. It would break the target line, it would break the trend line, and it would draw two new lines over here. But let me get rid of that, 45 minutes, and I want to show you another feature of the graph. Some teachers asked for some way to indicate that there was a break, a holiday, just time off from school so that students aren't expected to grow during time off. And if you'll see here on 12/22, there's no data point, which makes sense because that's Christmas break. So the solution is to scroll down and select hold. And what that does is flattens the target line and it flattens the trend line during that time. So this helps to account for time that students aren't receiving intervention. Remember, the hold is kind of like a pause button for the graph. Let's move on to the final elements of the graph, the basic elements anyway, the chart rather. The notes column here, and there's also a notes box to the bottom left of the graph. Let's talk about the notes column first. Use the notes column to record any notes that you want, though I highly recommend that you record any trimester changes, any class changes, any teacher changes here. So if a student started with teacher A here, you could indicate that in the notes section. If they went to teacher B here, you could indicate that in the notes section. You might also want to show a break in the graph here and select 30 minutes again, and what that does is it draws this black line and recalculates the target line and recalculates the trend line. Now the notes box below the graph is for students and the teachers. Whatever is typed here will also show up on a printout if you choose to print this page. So if you go to File and Print, you'll notice type here, the notes section will show up. Okay, you have the basics now. Now let's look at some detailed aspects of the graph. Let's start with the student information section. Scroll to the right. You'll notice all these gray boxes you can type data into. Really the only one required for the graph to function is the student name. All these others will be dependent on your principal or your curriculum specialist's decision. Student ID can go here. Let me explain what the ALEKS information is for. Here you would type the student's current class, and here you would type the number of topics in that class. And the reason this is there is to better gauge student progress. So for example, if you've got two students, student A, student B, they're each taking different classes. They both started at the same time and they're both making similar progress. After a month, they both finished 10% of their class. Well, if student A has a class that has 500 topics and student B has a class that has 300 topics, 10% of 500 is 50, 10% of 300 is 30, so student A has finished 50 topics in 1 month, student B has finished 30 topics in a month. It just helps you see how they're doing and how they're progressing, the speed at which they're going through the topics. Okay, next is the map data section. It's a really good idea to look up the student's score from last spring or the last scores that you have to help inform both intensity level decisions as well as course selection decisions. And then as the year progresses, enter the fall, winter, and spring map data as well. And then finally is the intensity section. You can read down here what these numbers mean, but basically it says in 2 weeks a student should increase by 4.5 percentage points if they're in a 30-minute intervention. And alternate 1 and 2 are for very special circumstances where you might not want these same levels of improvement, rates of improvement. I've entered a full year's worth of data onto this chart, and then of course it's plotted out on the graph. The next section I'm going to discuss making decisions. When do you choose 30 minutes? When do you choose 45 minutes? When do you use these features over here in the yellow column? So let's look at the first data point, 15. If you look at the note, I typed this in based on a student's course log. It's an Algebra 1 diagnostic. Because it's a diagnostic and not the beginning of a class, I would probably just leave this blank, and that's perfectly fine. Let's look at the second data point, 11, first trimester geometry. I'm guessing the student had a 30-minute intervention. And you can see as soon as an intervention is selected, a duration is selected, the target line, the blue line is plotted, and the red line, the dotted red line, the trend line is plotted as well based on the scores over here in the red text or red font. Now look again at the notes section. I've included the trimester, the class, and also the teacher. So here at week 2, the student's in geometry. Here at week 10, the student switches to pre-algebra. This would be an appropriate place to again choose another intensity. Now we're going from 30 minutes to 30 minutes. This is just denoting a change in the intervention. And now that I've selected a second intensity level, even though it's the same, this black line is drawn. That helps you see on the graph when the intervention has changed. So let's look at the next note. Second trimester pre-algebra, new teacher. Now it's up to you and your administrator whether or not you want to note with intensity level change that there's been a change in intervention. Totally up to you. And then look at the next note, third trimester. So the trimester has changed, the class has not changed, we're still in pre-algebra, the teacher has not changed. I personally wouldn't choose to put any intensity level in there because it's still 30 minutes, it's still the same class. And then the last part of this, your last option here is a hold, which would also be for a holiday or for a break. And again, I've been over this already, but it flattens the target line and it flattens the trend line to account for when a student is out of school. Now, if you have questions or if you have suggestions for improvement, I sure would be glad to hear them. My email address is mike.braun, B-R-A-U-N, @pulaski.kyschools.us.